Robert Abel and Bernard Grech spar off in a Chamber of Commerce debate today. Mask-wearing rules for school children could be scrapped right after Easter holidays, and tributes pour in for 28-year-old traffic victim Andrea Alamango. All this and more on Lovin Daily. Good evening, Malta and Gozo. Jonathan Chile here, joined by David Grech-Orpani today. We've got the latest updates from the 2022 general election campaign trail, and we've got a special guest in the building, BirdLife President Darryl Grima. Stay tuned to the end of the episode for that interview. But before that, David is here with details on the top story today.
Yeah, so Prime Minister Robert Abela and opposition leader Bernard Grech met for their second debate today at the Chamber of Commerce. It was a bit of a stark contrast with the previous one, no tribalistic audience and political sound bites, so it was kind of the first time we could compare them without, that external interference that some people, generally like because it adds color. It kind of lacked fireworks. The election is less than a week and a half away, and it was pretty much just a constant, challenge of each other's credentials on stability and change was most of the talking points. Moderator Rachel Attard, challenged them quite a lot when it came to acting like Father Christmas, promising all these pledges and all of that, questioning the viability of each manifesto. How are they going to fund these policies and these proposals? Again, Robert Abela mentioning this ambitious target of generating 20 billion euro of economic growth, and Bernard Grech reiterating these 10 new economic sectors. He said, we brought, all these sectors before, we will do it again. Again, tram versus metro, it's definitely one of the biggest talking points, so it was a highlight again, but not really that special. If you want to see the entire rundown, there's a detailed one on Lovin Malta and a meme-filled one on TikTok, but let's not forget, the election is in less than a week and a half away. The next one is televised on TVM just 3 days before the election. Here's hoping it gets a little bit saucier.
Yes, like David said, the election is less than 2 weeks away, and let's be very clear, Labour's Robert Abela is very far ahead in the polls when compared to his counterpart. So I think a lot of people were expecting, Bernard Grech to kind of seize the opportunity and land some form of killer blow or kind of bring something out that could really sway his chances. And while he performed very strongly, I don't think that killer blow was landed, but do let us know what you thought if you followed the debate in the comments below. Moving on to the second story, I think a lot of parents across Malta are going to be very happy to hear this. The first indication of when Maltese school children will be finally allowed to remove their masks has been laid out by Health Minister Chris Fearn today in a press conference. He said, quote, our aim is to survey the situation during the Easter holidays, but from what we are seeing in the term that follows, it will no longer be necessary for children to continue wearing masks in school. Now, he went on to say that if school children want to continue wearing their masks, they can. But as far as a mandatory practice, a mandatory rule and regulation from the government, this could finally be scrapped. Now, this is a big kind of update and development for Maltese parents. Just last week, we reported on the hashtag Unmask the Kids kind of campaign that you're seeing on social media, where parents are talking about the real life effects that wearing masks for long hours in the day are having on their children. Some kids spoke about, not being understood when they speak. Other children spoke about, mistakenly taking their mask out while playing with their friends during break, only to be shouted at by the teacher. So, there are some serious effects on this. Technically, Malta and the world is still in a pandemic, and we have to be very cognizant of that. But I think a lot of parents are going to be very happy to hear this update.
Yeah, absolutely. And this week started off with, unmask the adults, technically, with Monday being officially the first day that you didn't need to wear a mask in public outdoor areas. It seems like unmask the kids is not too far off on the horizon, with the return of students after Easter holidays being potentially the date that we finally don't need to see masks being worn by these small kids. Meanwhile, unfortunately, even though that was some pretty good news that we got this morning, the nation woke up to another shocking news of another fatality on Malta's roads. This time it was 28-year-old Luqa resident Andrea Alamango. The accident happened late last night at around 11 p.m. in Gżira, just on the Kapara flyover actually. Two 28-year-olds on driving identical bikes crashed. They were dragged a number of meters, unfortunately. Andrea Alamango was rushed to hospital, but he was certified as dead. So hours later, tribute started pouring in within hours. By 7, 8 a.m., a lot of his friends and family and people whose lives he had touched started writing heartbreaking tributes. They called him an amazing boy who made everyone smile. Unfortunately, these victims keep piling up. I mean, Alamango is now the 10th victim on Malta's roads in 2020, making this year, well, all 74 days of it, already more fatal than the entirety of 2021.
Yeah, no, that is a shocking statistic. The fact that more people have died on Malta's roads in, 74 days of 2022 compared to the entire year of 2021. Now, obviously, maybe less people were on the roads last year during COVID, but that is no excuse for what's happening on the roads. It seems like it's getting more dangerous to be out there. We've got motorcyclists, we've had sulky drivers, we had people just driving a normal car. It's really, it's not contained to just one type of vehicle or one road. It seems to be across the board. So please, if you're driving on Malta's roads, be careful out there. It's worth being 1 or 2 minutes later than, risking yours and other people's lives. Moving on to the next story, a bit of another sad story that is coming from Dingley. Photographs and footage have emerged of illegal dumping of, items as well as dead animals under the pristine countryside of Dingley, specifically under the Dingley Cliffs area. One hiker speaking to Lovin Malta and sending in footage said he was, quote, utterly disgusted at the amount of trash and dead animals that were being discarded in the otherwise beautiful, amazing cave situated right below Dingley Cliffs. I think you're seeing some of the footage right now on your screens. Now, some of the items seen in the area were everything from cardboard to wooden boxes to pallets, as well as dead animals. And the guy said, listen, it's not that difficult to organize a cleanup. He said he even spoke to NGO Zibel. The issue is, though, what kind of protections are there to stop this happening again? Should CCTV be set up? Should barriers be placed in the area? Everyone can kind of clean up debris and stuff, but what's going to stop people from dumping once again?
Yeah, I mean, it's absolutely shocking. It makes it worse that it's Dingley, such a picturesque location. In fact, there was one video that really was, were it not so sad, it was pretty much hilarious, just starting with this beautiful view and then it just pans into this disgusting pile of rubbish. This is definitely not the first time that we've seen images like this and videos, so clearly, there is an extremely bad habit of littering that needs to be addressed. Let's hope that it's addressed before we keep on seeing more of these, pristine locations in Malta. We don't have a lot of them being ruined this way. Meanwhile, speaking of bad habits, outspoken British TV sensation Steve Miller has set his sights on one very specific bad habit to do with Malta, Malta's status as the fattest country in Europe. He saw that and he thought to himself, challenge accepted. Steve Miller, who you might know from Fat Families, a TV hit, British TV hit from 2010, has announced that his new personal mission is to bring, his straight-talking approach to weight loss to Malta. We actually spoke to Lovin Malta, and he said Malta is the most beautiful country in Europe, and it's being spoilt by a reputation for being too fat. Doubled down in the way that only Miller would, saying, yes, I use the word fat because euphemisms do nothing but hide in the grim health realities of obesity. Basically what he used to do, for people who might not be familiar with Fat Families, is he used to spend a day with families, identify habits holding them back, and then spend the rest of the week kind of modifying their diet, and then give them a couple of weeks to continue. He's also a popular published author, and considering that over a quarter of Malta's adult population over 15 is classified as obese, I would definitely say yes, please. I have, of course, as well, a need for tips from Miller.
I can't wait to see this show if it does kind of get off the ground. If you are aware of kind of his style of hosting, it's a very in your face, very no nonsense, sassy even, typically British approach to hosting shows. It'll be interesting to see how he interacts with Maltese families, if they do allow Miller into their homes, to kind of see what's in the fridge, in the cupboards, and how they're cooking. So definitely stay tuned to Lovin Malta for an update to see what happens if Miller actually comes to Malta and takes on Malta's obesity problem. That brings us to the end of the first segment of today's episode of Lovin Daily. We're going to cut to a quick video right now, a trailer for our latest documentary. Very interesting. You definitely want to stay tuned for that when that's released in the coming days. And when we're back in the studio, we're going to have BirdLife President Darryl Grima here with us.
Now we are so integrated, so included, that we are now gathering in little clusters, but we can sit anywhere. In the 70s and the 80s, yes, of course, it was much more difficult because we were all still coming out and we were all still thinking, you know, oh, well, do we have the right to be who we are?
And I remember when JJ Mifsud Bonnici told me li biex tkun gejja għażla.
I was mostly dominated by a Catholic environment. I was part of the altar boys.
There was so much fear and everything was so hush-hush.
For me, becoming a fully actualized gay person would become a monster.
A lot of the parties were illegal back then.
Yes. In fact, the police used to raid them.
We would be verbally abused.
In those days, you couldn't go to the police or anything like that. Probably you'd be the one who gets locked up and not them.
Sometimes even physically.
People were throwing stones literally like throwing stones at us.
It was at the time that Putin was arresting gay people.
In fact, I think some of the pioneers were the drag queens, the female impersonators. I mean, they really had to put up with a lot of shit.
They kept reiterating the teaching of the Catholic Church without having any empathy whatsoever.
It was a moment when, you know, it couldn't be ignored anymore.
They do believe that there is the need of change, and I want also to be an agency for that change.
I was never really interested in getting married as well. We're like, that's something for straight couples, you know?
Am I ever going to get the chance to pop the question to somebody I love?
And we're back on Lovin Daily. Today we've got BirdLife President Darryl Grima in the office today to speak to us about kind of his view on what's happening in the election season. Thank you so much for joining us, Darryl.
Lovely, thanks.
So, you know, I've been following these rallies. I think a lot of people at home have been following these rallies from both main parties. And they seem to be talking about the environment a lot. Recently, you know, Robert Abela, the Labour Party's Robert Abela, was in Gozo, and he was saying that he wants Gozo to be climate neutral. Even before Malta, he was laying out plans for increased open spaces, green spaces. You know, we've been hearing about the trackless tram as well, alternative forms of transport. So we're hearing lots of kind of environmental pledges. As someone who's been active in the environment for years, kind of, how is your reaction to hearing these pledges? Are you impressed? Are you not impressed? Are you hopeful? What's the feeling you're getting right now?
Well, the first thing what we're hearing is that they are both appeasing the hunters and trappers. That is for sure. And let's not forget that birds are also part of the environment, and they are trying to appease them completely. Unfortunately, because there's the majority of people who would like to spend time in the countryside without being threatened or fearing a hunter or a trapper. But having said that, one of, I think the reason why the political parties are actually talking about the environment is because people want a good environment. We are annoyed with all the construction, all the debris, all the dust, all the noise, and the fact that you can't go in the countryside and enjoy. That is the reason why they are having to react. The big problem, though, is that we are suddenly starting to hear these 700 million, all these projects. But what these really are, they are infrastructural projects. Now, we have nothing against, I repeat, nothing against the garden in St. Anne's Square. Absolutely nothing. But that will be benches and trees. But what is more important than the gardens is protecting our natural habitats. And that is where the top priority should be, because once you lose the garrigue, once you lose our natural habitat, you can't get that back again. And that should be before anything else.
So when you hear these pledges, you know, especially seeing what we've seen over the last 5, 10, 15 years in Malta, do you kind of like scream internally like, okay, you're saying this, but where's the reality? Where's the actual concrete proposals that are going to help better Malta's environment?
But in fact, because we are very skeptical, the environment organizations, BirdLife Malta, Friends of the Earth, Nature Trust, Dinar Terra, FAA and Ramblers, we came up with a united front. And what we said was, Mil-klim al-fatti, from words to actions, because we've seen words, but we don't know whether all these words will actually become actions. In fact, we want to point out, 5 years ago, in the Labour manifesto, we were promised that environmental protection would be enshrined in the Constitution, and we can actually use it legally to protect the environment constitution-wise. That pledge never happened. So essentially, they can say a lot of things, but unfortunately is what happens within the 5 years that we have, and that is where we as environmental organizations will be. We will challenge step by step whatever happens in the next 5 years, whoever there is.
So this constitution thing, because I think it's very interesting, and if I'm not mistaken, there are some countries, maybe Ecuador, that has something a bit similar in the constitution. So what would this mean? Say someone in government does something in ODZ land, for example, or cuts down some trees that they shouldn't, they could be taken to court via this kind of mechanism, right?
Essentially what we're trying to state is the Constitution is there to protect the environment. But why do we want to protect the environment? Because we are guardians. We are here not because at the end of the day, whatever the environment is ours. We have been given the environment to take care for our children. Now they have a right for the environment. They have a right to have something which we probably are going to be destroying. So someone has to stand up, be it environmental NGOs, or it could be you on your personal capacity, and say, no, I disagree with this action because it is going to deny my children, my grandchildren, a right.
So I want to turn a little bit to kind of what should be on the environmental agenda. So we've been hearing a bit beyond the 700 million, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. What, according to you and the organization that you kind of are speaking for, what are some of the things that maybe are not being spoken about enough?
Yes. ERA and Planning Authority. Unfortunately, we know they need to become independent.
Absolutely.
Once and for all. All these political appointees and undercurrents, we know that they're not really independent. We need them to be independent. And we also need that if ERA is going to be on the board of Planning Authority, if it disagrees with something, it must have the right of veto. Because you can't say, okay, ERA is against, but it's just one vote along with the environmental vote, and that's all. Did you also know that the environmentalists who are on the Planning Authority and the ERA board, they are there to represent us, but they cannot consult us because they are bound by secrecy. So essentially, they're there to represent us, but they can't discuss with us. It's ridiculous at the end of the day. We also would like to, as we said, we're happy with the parks. We're happy with parks happening, but our garik, our habitat must be protected. And our biggest habitat, relatively ignored by both political parties, is our marine. Malta is small, but we have the biggest footprint, which is our sea, and that needs to be protected. Inside our seas, there is Posidonia, which is very, very important. It has also an impact on climate change. We need to ensure that our seas are protected. We're concerned. We're concerned that the tunnel, which we disagree with, between Malta and Gozo, is going to be an excuse to create rubble, to throw and reclamate.
Wow. Okay.
We're even concerned about the tunneling for the metro of anything. Where is all this debris going to happen? We don't want our sea to end up as an excuse for a dumping ground. The sea must be protected. When mentioning seas, the amount of ghost nets that are being found, something must happen about those.
So can you explain briefly what ghost nets are for people who might not know?
Ghost nets are essentially nets which end up lost. They are floating in the sea.
They can be massive.
They can be massive. Most of the time they are illegal fishing which are cut loose, and even though sometimes even legal fishing. And then in these nets which are in the middle of the sea, dolphins get caught, turtles get caught, fish get caught, and becomes a graveyard of animals. And we need to stop this. We need to control this. Now, talking about enforcement, we do not have environmental police on this island. We have a section which has been sort of changed, but we do not have dedicated environmental police.
Don't we have some rangers in like Mizib and those areas?
Now, the rangers are highly underpaid people. So you're there, you're out there, you're trying to protect the environment, and you're given pittance. Okay. Let's give people the salary they deserve. We want rangers, we want environmental police, and we want rangers to be. Now, we mentioned earlier hunting, and both parties seem to be caught under the spell of hunters. It's as though 10,000 people rule this country, and the rest of us, have no say in it.
And it's long been this way.
And this election seemed to have gone even worse. for some reason or another, because I've been old enough to hear, and this time we're hearing both of them talking about spring hunting. Spring hunting, which potentially will be opened by Ornis, which would be a mistake, will result in Malta suffering legal actions from the European Union. So it's about time we recognize that, there's a vast majority of people who want to enjoy the countryside. Natura 2000 sites like Maestral. Hunting is permitted there. Go on a Sunday. Why can't the weekends, at least on the weekends, stop hunting there? So whoever wants to go and enjoy the countryside with the family doesn't need to be bullied by hunters there. It's a small action.
Yep.
Leave them between Monday to Friday, but at least Saturday, Sunday.
So just to play devil's advocate, so for the hunters that abide by the law, that are passionate about it, they love the environment, or so they say, kind of in BirdLife's view, where should they hunt? Should they be allowed to hunt at all?
Well, BirdLife is not an abolitionist organization, though personally, as you know, I'm a vegan, so at the end of the day, actually a very funny story. I turned vegetarian 35 years ago because my conversations with hunters would always say, but you eat chicken, so I can't eat quail. So I said, okay, that was the final push for me to become vegetarian. Now today I'm vegan. But the big problem we know is that hunters go out, and it isn't a question of sustainable, so-called sustainable hunting or hunting which is legal, but a lot of illegal hunting happens. And it is rampant. We see the open season is an excuse to shoot it all. And that's what happens. So, and let's also not forget that the government has given Mizip and Nahraj to the hunters, the biggest stretch of land. Now it's true that they are saying they're going to do camping area, but in reality, that place is dedicated to a small group of people, that should be for everybody to enjoy. Why should it be just for a small group of people?
I mean, they say they maintain it, right?
Well, we've seen, we have different opinions on maintenance, and recently there was an issue on dumping there, which was in the media as well.
Absolutely.
And we're hoping that ERA takes action there. So that type of action has never happened in any of our reserves, and would never happen in any of our reserves, because we abide by ERA regulations. So
the proof's in the pudding.
The proof's in the pudding.
There you go. So whoever's elected next for the next administration, maybe even if we get a third party elected, you never know. What do you hope to see from them?
We really hope that the environment is truly put as a priority. Now that is why we said mill-klim al-fatti, from words to facts, because if we don't start implementing, we have an issue on climate, we have an issue on example waste. Nobody's talking. There has been progress, it's true, there has been progress on waste separation at home. But why aren't we saying it's about time that we have to have obligatory waste separation?
Okay, very good.
At the end of the day, we've been educating people for a long time, but at some moment in time you have to stop educating, like when it was on the seatbelts. When did people decide that they have to wear the seatbelt? When they were afraid there's a warden around the corner who's ready to find them. And that's your own personal safety. So if we want people to start separating all the waste, we have to say, you have to do it. And if you're not doing it, I'm sending an inspector. He's going to open up your bag. If you find something in your bag, you get fined.
So you see this happening, like realistically? You'd like to see this happen?
Yes, and it happens across different countries. In Europe, we're European, so let's take the best out of Europe. Many European countries separate completely their waste, and we are lagging behind in waste separation. So it doesn't take much. We've educated people, we've given them bins, free bins, and everybody was lining everywhere to get their free bin. Now that you have your free bin and you've had your free bags and everything, now it's time to do it. And if you don't do it, you get fined.
I like it. I really like that, actually. So both in a personal capacity as well as BirdLife, are there any candidates that you're endorsing, or that maybe you're not endorsing, but have shown to have a good tendency towards the environment?
Well, I believe there are a number of individuals who have been courageous enough even to speak against the trend and talk on environment and on hunting. Yet as an organization, as BirdLife, I can say that we never endorse. We leave FK&K to do that. They've done that. They've endorsed the individuals themselves. But I don't think as an organization we should go down that route. To do that is something which I personally, at this moment, do not believe. But that is my opinion.
And personally, any candidates as Darryl Grima, just personal capacity, that are standing out to you?
Well, there are individuals who are good, but again, I would rather not give any personal endorsements. And remember, I live in Zebuch, which is very pro-hunting, so it becomes a bit difficult for us.
Finally, for any potential candidates who might be elected as MPs in the next election, what's your message to them that might be watching this tonight?
Well, look, it's time we start standing up. We stand up at the bullies, which are the hunters. We stand up at the developers who say that even that is a wrong word. They are not developing; they're just building. We have to put the environment as a priority, and the general population. People want it. This is why we're seeing in both manifestos of the big parties the environment, or what they are defining the environment as, being put forward, because people are actually in their polls. It's creeping up and up and up. And there's a reason why this, because people are annoyed. We're annoyed. And what we're saying is to everybody, if vote ambient, vote on environmental issues, make your voice heard. When someone comes knocking on your door and saying he's a candidate, talk about the environment. Let them realize.
Darryl, I think a lot of our readers are going to resonate with what you're saying. I can tell you even internally, environment is definitely a major issue for our readers, as well as for the team that make out the Lovin Malta stuff. So guys, let us know what you thought of this interview in the comments below, whether you agree with Darryl or whether you disagree with Darryl on any of these points. And once again, Darryl, thanks so much for joining us this evening.
Thanks, Lovin.
That brings us to the end of today's episode. From myself and the whole Lovin Malta team, have an evening full of lovin'.